Hi Weaving friends, I thought it was about time that I did a studio vlog because it has been some time since I last did. But today I wanted to have a particular theme for the vlog, and the theme is finding easier ways to do difficult things. I think that not just in creative pursuits but in life in general, we often get hung up about the correct way or the best way to do something. But I have a few different ideas that I want to share with you today based on a couple of examples that I'm going to give. Now, there are all different processes that can be used to achieve the same or similar results. The problem is that we can get a little bit hung up on the process and the way that, often because of preconceived ideas, maybe from childhood, from school, from family, from friends, whatever, we have these ideas about how things are meant to be done. And these things actually sometimes can do us a little bit of a disservice because they don't really allow us to think around a process, and they can become like a wall in between us and the thing that we want to achieve. The first example that I'm going to give of this is not weaving, but the other example will be. So I have been dabbling in watercolour, in particular watercolour pencils, for many years. The set of watercolour pencils that I have, my sister gave to me probably about 20 years ago now, and I still have the pencils and I haven't had to replace any of them, which shows you how much they've been used. Some of them are getting shorter, but a lot of them are still full size. So I've dabbled in it over and over, but I haven't really delved in properly. And one of the reasons is because I'm not a confident drawer. I've always found it quite difficult to draw either from still life or from photographs. I've found that I can draw from other people's drawings, but that's not helpful if you want to create your own original art. So I was watching a YouTube video recently, I'll link it down below, and the woman who was doing the video is a professional artist, and she was using a transfer method using a photo of the scene that she wanted to create and scribbling all over the back with pencil, and then turning it over and then using a pencil or a pen to trace the outline of the main objects that she wanted to include in her piece. Now, straight away, this method really appealed to me because to me, one of the hardest things is getting that perspective, getting buildings and other objects to look correct and not on a lean or a little bit wonky or a little bit crazy and unrealistic. But seeing her method of transfer made me wonder whether I should be giving that a go. However, there was something in the back of my mind and it was saying, hey, that's cheating. Don't you know that's cheating? Everyone knows that's cheating. That's tracing. That's not art. It's just cheating. So I had a bit of a think about it, and I thought, you know what? I've been told it's cheating and I've believed that it's cheating, any kind of tracing method. But I think I'm just going to give this a go and see how it turns out. And if it turns out well, I'll probably use that method again. And I think I'm going to change my ideas on what I think cheating is when it comes to making an art piece. So I did the piece, I'm going to show you. I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I used the transfer method. Oh, it's very, very bright. Let's see, is it going to adjust for us? If it's not going to adjust, I will just put a photo up of it instead. It's very bright. So I chose an old building because I love photographing old buildings and I love drawing them. And this is an old building in New South Wales in a place called East Boyd, and it's part of an old whaler's hut at an old whaling station. It's a historic building now. And what I used with the transfer method is I got the main parts of the building in the structure. And I also put in some of the tree trunks and the fence post, you know, the major elements of the piece, and the rest I kind of made up a little bit as I went along, using my original photo as a reference point. And I am really happy with how it came out, and I'm definitely going to be using the transfer method again. Now, I posted about this on social media, And I mentioned that I had used the transfer method, and I said it's a controversial topic, and I expected to get a bit of backlash. I was really surprised with what happened. I got a lot of comments, and not one person said that they thought it was cheating. How interesting that was to me. A couple of people pointed out the camera obscura, and I said, of course, the artists have been using camera obscura for years to project images in order to make art from them. So this idea of transferring an image in order to make an artwork has been going on for a really long time. And what it has allowed me to do is it's allowed me to go from sitting and looking at the photo and feeling like I couldn't make a start because I didn't want to mess up the lines of the building, to having a finished art piece. It still took a long time, but that's okay. But it allowed me to make the part that was most difficult to me easier, and therefore it allowed me to achieve my goal. Here's my next example, and it is on the loom as I promised. This example is twofold in the way that it's been made easier, something that could have been difficult. I'm weaving some summer and winter. I have woven summer and winter previously, and it went okay, but not as good as I would have liked. I felt like once I had gotten past all of the main difficulties that the weaving was going to be easy. But then I found that my set was not quite right, and that was a bit of a dampener on the project for me. So I'm having another go at summer and winter. And I've done a lot of research, so I have a decent understanding of how to weave it now. But as I said, there are two ways that I've made it easier on myself this time so that I could get past the difficulties in a rush and get to the good part and prove to myself that I can do this. So first of all, I'm using a really good resource. This is Next Steps in Weaving by Pattie Graver. This is a fantastic book. I love it. It has all kinds of weaving information in it. It even says on the front what you never knew you needed to know. Great title, because that is exactly what this book is. So she has a section on summer and winter. I'm using her section as a sampler, and I'm following through with her sampler instructions. I'm using slightly different yarns because I didn't have the same yarns that she used in the book. But basically I'm using a good guide. So that is the first part where I'm getting over that difficult hurdle. Instead of starting from scratch and figuring out all of the stuff myself from the very beginning like I usually do, I thought this time I'm going to follow somebody else who has a lot of experience, who knows what they're doing, and I'm going to follow what she does and see how it turns out. The next part of this project that has made something difficult easier is the treadling. The way that Pattie sets up the treadling in the book is instead of tying up your treadles to make every single shaft combination that you need, which is, it can be quite a lot of treadles, instead she explains how to tie up just 4 treadles on these 4 shafts, to tie up 1 shaft to every treadle, so 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then when you're doing the weaving, to use more than 1 treadle at a time, because traditionally as weavers we tie up the shafts that we need to the treadle, and so then we're only pressing 1 treadle at a time. But that doesn't mean that we have to. And what this kind of tie-up enables you to do, especially if you're new to summer and winter, is to really understand and be aware of the shafts that are moving and the ones that you're operating at different times, so they become very familiar to you, and through that you understand the structure a little bit more. Sometimes if you use a traditional tie-up, and so you have 3, 4, maybe more shafts tied up to each treadle, then you're just focusing on, okay, now I press treadle 1, now I press treadle 3, and you're not really thinking necessarily about which shafts are tied up to those treadles. But with having just 1 shaft tied to each treadle and combining them, my mind, my brain is thinking as I'm weaving, okay, I'm stepping on treadle 1 and treadle 3. That means that shafts 1 and 3 are being operated. Doing this kind of tie up also means that you don't need to have a heap of treadles on your loom, as long as you can step on the number of treadles that you need at any given time, which for this pattern is not a problem at all because you don't need to step on more than 2 treadles at a time. I actually thought of another example just as I was talking to you, and this is a really classic one, embroidery. Okay, so in embroidery, because I used to do a lot of embroidery and I've done embroidery classes with the guild and all of that kind of thing. I was quite involved at one point. Before my younger self eyesight decided to pack its bags and leave without me. In embroidery, I feel like look, embroiderers are really nice, but I feel like there are rules and that you're not supposed to break the rules or bend the rules. And in creative processes, I am a rule breaker and bender any way I can. And that's what this video is about, really, is finding easier ways to get the same results. Because why not? Why stick to a process that is more rigid, that might not suit you? If it suits someone else, that's fine. But if it doesn't suit you, why should you have to stick to that same process? What if you can take little shortcuts? What if you can do things differently and end up with great results? You can. I do it all the time. And I want to encourage you to do the same, because having something finished that you're happy with and that you're proud of is better than sitting back and saying, I can't do that because of such and such, whatever the reason is. It's too hard, this part of the process. I'm like, well, find a different way to do it and you can get the results. I digress. This is a piece of embroidery that I did a long time ago. My husband actually designed this, and this is crewel embroidery and it's wool. I was really into crewel embroidery at one point. So in embroidery, they always talk about the back of the work. Always talking about the back of the work. The most skilled embroiderer is the one who has the back of the work looking just as good as the front of the work. Okay? I admit that takes great skill. It does. But I don't care because nobody is going to see the back of the work in most projects. So I never finished this project. It was going to be a needle book, which is why I had it in this kind of shape with the dots around the outside. But I never did sew it into a needle book. I guess I've got a needle book already and it's the one that I use, and you know, this just ended up in the never got finished projects. This is the back. So there you go, in all its glory. So the front, nice and neat. The back, not very neat. And I'm like, this is the front. This is my finished piece of work that anyone is going to see, that I'm going to look at. I'm not going to be looking at the back all the time. And if I had sewn it into a needle book, no one would ever see the back again. The only time that the back, a messy back, would be a problem is if you had, say if you had like really big knots at the back and it created really raised areas, then that might, especially if you're going to frame it, then that might make the work stand out and look lumpy in those areas. That's the only time I can imagine it being a problem. Otherwise, I'm just going to sew it in, or I'm going to place something on the back of it, and no one's ever going to know the difference. And I'm happy with how the front looks. So why does it matter what the back looks like? It's of no consequence to me. So one final thing that I want to say is, yes, there are definitely times where processes, specific processes, are essential to the outcome. I'm definitely not advocating for sloppy work or partly unfinished work or anything like that. I'm advocating for enabling people to do things that they maybe think that they can't do. And for getting past stumbling blocks, and for not being perfect, and not believing everything that you're told about a process, that it has to be a certain way, and just having a go and trying things and just seeing how you go, see how it turns out. And hey, if you don't like the way your project turns out, probably you learn something for next time. Isn't it worth spending a bit of time and some materials to have that spirit of creativity, curiosity, excitement? There's just so much to learn. There's so many fun things to do. There's so many wonderful things you can produce. And if you can do that on your own terms, in your own way, even better. Then it's even more a work of art because it's all you. All right, so before I go, I just want to mention that we are having an Inkle challenge this month, the month of October, all of October 2023. There is an Inkle challenge. I'm running the challenge to try and encourage people to weave more Inkle bands or to get started weaving Inkle bands if you haven't started. How it's running is that if you have enrolled in my Inkle weaving course, or if you plan to enroll in the course, you will find a link to a Facebook group within that course. And in the Facebook group, we are doing some fun things. We're weaving bands, we're sharing bands, we are doing some live sessions, we are having giveaways, and it's going great so far. And you can drop in and join in anytime throughout October. You can even join up if it's near the end of the month. It's absolutely fine. We will support you and would love to see you there. I'm going to leave a link with more information on the Inkle Weaving Challenge down below, and I'll also leave links to anything else that I've mentioned today. And until next time, happy weaving.